Rain pounded relentlessly on the roof of St. Catherine's Maternity Hospital, Lagos, as flashes of lightning lit up the dark sky. Thunder roared across the city, and the old hospital generator struggled to keep the lights on. A black Mercedes-Benz drove through the hospital gate and came to a stop in front of the maternity ward. Chief Raymond Okafor hurried to the back seat and gently opened the car door. His wife, Evelyn, cried out in pain as another contraction gripped her. "Raymond, I can't!" she gasped, holding tightly onto his arm. "You'll be fine, my love. We're here now." A nurse rushed outside with the hospital trolley. "Quickly," she said, "place her here." Raymond carefully helped Evelyn onto the trolley. She grabbed his hand tightly. "Please, don't leave me." Raymond smiled reassuringly. "I'm not going anywhere."
Never.
The nurse wheeled Evelyn into the hospital while Raymond hurried beside her through the long corridor. Inside the labor room, a doctor and nurses immediately surrounded Evelyn. Dr. Balogun looked at her calmly. "Mrs. Okafor, you're doing
great,
very
Mrs.
well.
Okafor. Just one
more push. You
Come on,
can do
Evelyn,
it."
you can do this.
Evelyn screamed in pain. Raymond stood beside her, holding her hand firmly. "I'm right here," he whispered. "Look at me. Just breathe."
I'm here.
One
Look at
final
me.
push.
Just breathe. You've
Then,
got this.
A loud cry
Congratulations.
echoed
Boy,
through the labor
Thank
room.
you, Lord.
Hello,
The doctor
my little
smiled.
miracle.
Our family is
"Congratulations, Chief. It's a healthy baby boy." Raymond froze for a moment. Then, tears filled his eyes. "My son!" The nurse gently placed the baby into Evelyn's arms. She kissed his tiny forehead. "My little miracle." Raymond leaned over and embraced both mother and child. "Our family is complete."
Just a few rooms away, another woman cried out in pain. Unlike the VIP suite, there were no expensive gifts, no security guards, no visitors, only an old ceiling fan turning slowly above a worn-out hospital bed. Grace Eze struggled through labor, while her husband, Jacob, stood beside her in his faded mechanic overalls, stained with engine oil from a day's work. She reached out weakly and held his hand. "Jacob," he replied softly.
"Jacob,
"I'm here. You won't
I'm
leave
here.
us." Jacob forced a
Promise
smile.
you won't leave me."
"Never." The nurse encouraged her to push one last time.
Push.
Moments later, another baby boy
Congratulations.
filled the room
My
with his
son.
cries.
He's beautiful.
Very
"Congratulations,"
beautiful.
the nurse said with a smile. "You have a healthy baby boy." Jacob carefully carried his son for the first time. "My son." Grace smiled through tears. "Look at him. He's beautiful." Jacob nodded. "Very beautiful." Then, his eyes wandered through the open door. Across the corridor, he saw nurses carrying beautiful flower bouquets into the VIP ward. He watched Chief Raymond laughing happily as visitors congratulated him. Jacob slowly lowered his eyes and looked back at his own son. His smile on his face slowly disappeared. Hours later, both babies slept peacefully inside the hospital nursery. Young Nurse Stella carefully checked the first wrist tag. "Baby Raymond Okafor," she smiled, "healthy." She moved to the second crib. "Baby Jacob Eze, healthy too." She gently adjusted both blankets before another nurse called her away. "Stella, Ward 3 need your help." "I'll be right there." She took one last look at both babies before leaving the nursery. Back in the general ward, Grace had fallen asleep. Jacob sat quietly beside her. The rain continued to fall outside. As he stared into the darkness, he heard two nurses talking as they walked past the ward. "Chief Raymond has already opened an education account for his son. They say that child will never know poverty." Their voices slowly faded. Jacob remained silent. His mind drifted to his landlord shouting at him only weeks before, "If you don't pay next month's rent, back out of my house." He remembered Grace crying because they couldn't afford her pregnancy medication. Then he remembered the promise he had made before his son was born. "You'll have a better life than mine." His breathing became heavy. "No," he whispered to himself. "No, no father should think this." He shut his eyes tightly, but sleep refused to come. Then, a deafening crack of thunder shook the hospital. The lights went out. Darkness swallowed the entire building. Patients screamed. Nurses shouted from different directions. "The generator has failed." Jacob slowly opened his eyes. His heart pounded against his chest. He turned and looked at his sleeping son. Then he looked toward the nursery corridor. Without saying another word, he stood up. As Jacob took his first step toward the nursery, he had no idea that his single decision would change the lives of two families forever. But hidden somewhere in the darkness, another pair of eyes was watching every move he made. Inside, everything was silent. Two tiny babies slept peacefully in their bassinets, completely unaware that one desperate father was about to change both their lives. Jacob walked toward the first crib. He looked at the wrist tag. Baby Raymond Okafor. He swallowed hard. Then he walked to the second crib. Baby Jacob Eze, his own son. Jacob carefully lifted his baby into his arms. He kissed his forehead. "My son, you'll never know hunger. You'll never know shame. You'll go to the best schools. You'll have everything I could never give you." Still crying, he gently placed his own son into the rich baby's crib. Then, with shaking hands, he removed both wristbands, swapped them, checked them again. Now, his son wore the name Raymond Okafor. Jacob smiled through tears. "I'm sorry," he whispered as he looked at the other baby. "I'm truly sorry." Unable to bear another look, he quietly walked out of the nursery. The room became silent once again. But Jacob wasn't alone. Hidden behind the half-open nursery door stood young Nurse Stella, frozen. She had seen everything. Her breathing became faster. "Jesus," she whispered. "What have you done?"
Just then, the generator roared back to life. Bright lights flooded the room. Another nurse hurried inside carrying an emergency lantern. "Stella, are you all right?" Stella quickly wiped away her tears. "Yes, I just came to check on the babies." The nurse smiled as she looked into both bassinets. "They're sleeping peacefully." Stella nodded. "Yes, they're both fine." But deep inside, she knew nothing would ever be fine again. She looked at the two sleeping boys and quietly whispered, "Lord, please let this secret die with me." Outside, the rain slowly began to ease. Morning was approaching, but for two families, a storm had only just begun. As the first rays of sunlight touched the hospital windows, two fathers prepared to take their newborn sons home. One smiled with gratitude, the other smiled with relief. Neither of them knew that the truth they believed would shape the next 30 years of their lives. And somewhere nearby, a young nurse silently carried a secret that would one day shake both families to their very foundation. If you're enjoying this story, please support this channel by liking this video, subscribing, and turning on the notification bell so you don't miss the next episode. The biggest secret is about to be revealed. Tell me in the comments, what would you have done if you were Stella? Would you have kept the secret for 30 years or told the truth much earlier? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Until our next story, keep believing that every secret has its day, every wound can heal, and every storm eventually passes. God bless you.